Call to order the meeting of the Select Board of October 22nd. Roll call, Mr. Tattlebaum.
Yes.
Mr. Mickelson.
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill.
Yes.
Mrs. Brooks.
Yes.
And the chair. Planning Board? Please
Call
open.
to order the meeting of the Dartmouth Planning Board, October 22nd, with a roll call vote. Kevin Estes,
Yes.
Margaret Sweet,
Here.
Nick Cyclepatis.
Here.
And Helio Rosa will not be able to make it today. Kevin Mello, present.
All right, the meeting is being recorded for broadcasting at a later date. It is not live because of the interviews. Please stand as we salute the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands,
one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, please be seated. All right, tonight, we're here to interview two candidates for the position of planning director. Chairman Mello, would you like to make a statement, brief statement for the planning board?
I have nothing prepared, but we are
That never stopped
Off the
anybody.
cuff.
we are getting along well with Ross helping us and John Hanson filling in, but it is vital that we fill this position. It is not necessary to fill it if it's not the right person. If we find the right person, we should fill the, if neither of these candidates seem to be what the town is looking for, we are prepared to continue working as we are and continue the search.
Did he say if neither?
Okay. Okay. Yeah, so let me just, you don't think either candidate is,
No, I'm saying if, as a joint, unfortunately, I did not make the meeting to interview the candidates, so this is my first bite of the apple.
okay, so that's just your statement, that's not a statement of the board, correct?
That's not a statement of the board, but that is a fact, that if it is deemed that neither is,
That makes sense.
It does make sense, but usually at this point in time, when we have a joint meeting like this, it means we're interviewing candidates for the position, not trying to find out that if they are fit for the position. I'm a little disappointed in that, but moving forward. Mr. Vitale.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this evening, we do have two candidates before the boards for their final set of interviews. Over the last couple of months, we have advertised the position of planning director. We conducted first round of interviews this past week on the 15th. From that first round of interviews, the screening committee put forward two finalists this evening. So Ms. Cameron Bennett and Mr. Daniel S. Giosa. The committee felt both were worthy of coming to the joint boards for consideration for the planning director position. So just a little bit about the format for tonight. A little while ago, I distributed the interview questions. So the interview questions are a combination of new questions as well as a couple that were asked in the first round of interviews and ones that we felt were important for the joint boards to hear as it related to the planning director position. We can go back to those in just a second, but with regards to the format, each candidate has to be asked the same series of questions, but if there is something that a candidate says that we want to ask a follow-up question on, we can do that, but we have to, again, ask the same series of questions to both candidates. There's 45 minutes of time allotted for both interviews. With that, there's a little bit of time in there, again, for follow-up questions or things of that nature, but around the 40-minute mark, I will just make a note so that we can begin to wrap it up and allow the candidate time to ask us questions if they have any. There'll be a brief 5-minute break between each interview, and that will allow one candidate to step out and us to go get the other candidate who is waiting in the other area of Town Hall. So following that, the boards have the opportunity to deliberate after both interviews have concluded. And the boards will also have the opportunity, should they wish to do so, to make a decision tonight. We do have a item later on in the agenda for an executive session. Should it get to that, we do have that posted. Regardless, both candidates will be notified after the meeting tonight, either way. So with that, I just want to go back and touch base on the interview questions that were handed out.
We don't have copies of them.
Oh, my apologies.
I think you left to make more copies.
No problem.
No.
Here.
Okay, thank you.
Along with the vacuum.
So with that, there are 8 questions. I'll just say that with regards to the asking of the questions, I'd leave it to the discretion of the board to decide who or which board asks what question. However, when it does come time to make a motion, each board will be making motions individually. So the planning board would make its recommendation first, and then the select board would ratify that, whatever decision was made by the boards. So with that, I will turn it back over to the chairs.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Tattelbaum.
the executive session, if we get to it, does not include the planning board, it's just the select board.
That is correct.
Okay.
Okay. It is my intention to allow the planning board to ask the questions first. This is the person that you'll be working with, so you have the honors. So that is my intention. And then any questions up here will follow up.
Thank you.
Personally, I do not intend to ask any questions, so I like to hear everybody else. Okay. All right, so we might as well get started. Let's, you want to get
Yep. Step out.
Denise to bring the first person in, please?
Yes, I'll be back in just a second.
At some point in time, this jacket's coming off.
Well, it's warm in here, even
Well,
for me.
if I take it off, my wife's gonna yell at me because I got a T-shirt underneath. You know, wearing a T-shirt underneath.
Well, could have thought of that and invented it. Give me jacket.
I had a shirt at the office and I didn't have time. I know. I had a collar shirt at the office. I just didn't feel
I
like
was with him today. Don't look so
Hi, Cameron. Just have a seat, relax.
Thank you.
It's not an inquisition.
Could be, but it is.
All right, well, good evening.
Good evening.
Hi, welcome to the town, Dartmouth. We're members of the select board. We're basically the executive branch of the town. Planning board. These are the 4 individuals, soon to be 5, that if hired, you'll be working with. So 4 introductions. Mr. Tattelbaum, please start.
I am Dave Tattlebaum, I live in the town of Dartmouth.
We all live in the
I
town
know
of
you.
Dartmouth.
Trick question.
Yeah, really.
Stanley Mickelson.
I'm Sean McDonald, chairman.
Chris Vitale, co-interim town administrator.
Over there.
Gary Earl, Quantum Town Administrator, Finance Director, and Treasurer.
Beautiful.
I'm Heidi Brooks, member of the select board.
Chris O'Neill, good to see you, Cameron.
To see you.
Kevin Estes, Vice Chair.
Kevin Mello, Chair of the Planning Board.
Margaret Sweet, clerk. Nice to see you again. Nice to see you.
Nicholas Cyclepatis, Planning Board.
Okay, all right, so basically the format's gonna go, we have about 45 minutes to get to know you, and drill you with a whole lot of questions that require all sorts of thoughts and intelligence. We're gonna start with the planning board with the questions. Basically, both candidates get the same set of questions, so that, we can compare the answers. And if there's anything that you say that piques our interest, we may have just a little bit of a follow-up. And then what we'll do is you can introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about yourself in the beginning. We'll have the questions, and then we can give you time for a summation, wrap-up, whatever you want to call it, okay?
Sounds
All right,
good.
so please, the floor is yours.
My name is Cameron Bennett.
Cameron, just do me a favor, just bring the microphone close to you to listen to the million of people that are home.
My name is Cameron Bennett. I am currently the Assistant Planning Director for the City of Pawtucket, which I have been in this role for about 2 years. Before that, I was a project manager at environmental consulting firms, doing all sorts of environmental work across both Massachusetts and Rhode Island. Prior to that, I got my master's degree in environmental policy from Oxford, and prior to that, my bachelor's in psychology and environmental studies from Case Western Reserve University. I currently live in West Warwick, Rhode Island, and I grew up in Mattapoisett, so I've spent a lot of time in Dartmouth, which is what piqued my interest in this position. So.
Great. Okay. Chairman Mello.
Okay, so that was number one, telling us a little bit about yourself. A follow-up that I have to that, you have studied and done a lot of work in Rhode Island.
Mm-hmm.
How will you be able to use that and transfer your skills from Rhode Island to Massachusetts, which has different laws, regulations?
So a lot of the, so my environmental consulting firms that I worked for were out of Rhode Island, but we did a lot of work in Massachusetts. So that required learning both the Rhode Island DEM and Massachusetts DEP regulations and policies. And the intent is very similar, though the details are different. But that, as well as my current position, I think that it is a skill to be able to read policy and understand policy and ordinances and bylaws and things like that. So I know how to do that, and that's just something that I've just kind of learned over the years. I think I mentioned in my first interview that when I started with the City of Pawtucket, I didn't really have anyone training me, that it was kind of a learn on the job, and I staffed the Planning Commission of Pawtucket, so it was a very quick process of I had about a month and a half to figure out what the ordinances and policies of the City of Pawtucket were. And doing that mostly on my own with a little bit of guidance. I think that I would be able to do the same with the bylaws of Dartmouth and getting more used to the policies of Massachusetts versus Rhode Island as well.
Very good, thank you.
In regards to planning, and what we're doing is trying to look ahead for any problems and developments and everything. What do you think the biggest challenges are for a town like Dartmouth? We have about 34,000 people. What would you say one of the biggest challenges are with our town?
Maybe it's just my environmental background, but I think because of the coastal aspect of Dartmouth, that flood mitigation is going to be a big issue, sea level rise, and then balancing both. I know Dartmouth has a large agricultural community, and balancing that with development and creating housing and allowing for an expanding population as well. So I would say that those two pieces would be the biggest challenge.
So you must be familiar with the amount of commercial that we have in this town, which we're lucky for, and the amount of agricultural that we have, and single-family homes. And how do you see that coming about in the next 10 years?
Do you mean the expansion?
Yes.
So I think expanding commercial is always a good idea for increasing tax revenue and really drawing people back to the town and having more people want to come here. And then also, but it is important to protect natural resources, to protect agriculture, and kind of creating boundaries between those two areas. So I think my first interview had talked about kind of creating those boundaries of allowing those things to kind of come together, but just being able to delineate what areas can be reserved for agriculture, for residential, and finding those spaces that are in commercial areas that can maintain that commercial, or allow for commercial growth within those specific areas.
Thank you.
Yep.
You want to ask a question?
Yeah, I'd like to ask a follow-up, Nicholas Psychopatis. Similar to what Margaret asked you, I want to ask it from a different perspective. Congratulations on your background. It's extremely focused, and you are well achieved and so on, and I congratulate you from that perspective.
Thank you.
I'm one of the youngest members in terms of time on the board, so I don't come from a world of experience, but I come from a world of concern for the town that I grew up in.
Yep.
And I'm cautious to ask, but I want you to understand my position as one of the 5 members of the board. Will your deep-rooted background from an environmental and agricultural perspective be one that sheds light on what we need to know and educate us, but not hinder us as an individual, as a director above our board, while we're trying to promote growth and development in many regions, in many aspects, not regions. It's not just Route 6 in the commercial sector. We need 55-plus housing. We need 62-plus housing. We need housing. We need the opportunity for people to stay in Dartmouth. Do you feel that you have the ability to use your background constructively, but at the same time help us facilitate what our goals are as a 5-person board at this moment?
Absolutely. So currently working in Pawtucket, a lot of the environmental issues that have come up are flooding and climate resilience and trying to protect existing green space while allowing for, there is a multi-million-dollar soccer stadium that is being built in Pawtucket. They're building a brand new high school. They are trying to reinvigorate the downtown and create more commercial and getting people back to the city. And those are all projects that I have been working on, and they are just as important as any of the environmental that I have in my background. But I think it's also that balance of you can't have commercial growth if the focus is, if we get a hurricane or if we get something that having that coastal protection and, I've done a lot of work with our hazard mitigation plan and working with FEMA and Rhode Island EMA to make sure that flooding doesn't become an issue. And in a city like Pawtucket, that happens to be from the fact that it's pretty much all paved. So it's all solid surface. So it's in Pawtucket, that's the issue, and that's the balance of commercial, protecting residential areas, while also using my environmental background to say, well, these might be issues that are not being properly addressed that need to be addressed in order to facilitate additional commercial growth. Because people are not going to want to have their commercial business if the infrastructure isn't available to allow for that and to keep the town moving forward.
I appreciate that. Can I ask a follow-up question? May I ask a follow-up question? Our town is approximately 38,900 some odd acres, 24,000 acres of water and so on. And DNRT, as far as natural territory and so on, is around 5,500 acres. With your background, is there a percentage of total square acres that one might want to achieve and/or is a goal, or not necessarily? Is there an algorithm?
I think it really, every community is different. I think it's about having balance of, I do love DNRT and I've gone through their parks and seen the daffodils and all of that. And that's worth protecting, absolutely. But I don't think that there is necessarily a percentage of green space. I don't really support getting rid of all green space. But if there is green space that is being taken away for commercial because that's in a proper location for more commercial, finding another place that might have better opportunity to create green space, so it's not being necessarily taken away. But I don't think that there is any particular number or goal to hit. It's more what meets the needs of the community.
Thank you.
Yeah.
This position requires excellent verbal and written communication skills. You're demonstrating that right now, thank you. But can you describe, in your experience with public speaking and building consensus among various stakeholders, and give some examples of high-level legal written documents that you may have developed?
Sure. So I currently staff the Planning Commission in Pawtucket. So all of the recommendations, so notices of decision, agendas, minutes, all of those communications are written by me. I do go in front of City Council, and so writing letters to City Council that all become part of the public record. So I also staff the Historic District Commission and the Riverfront Commission. The Historic District Commission also involves drafting ordinances, because any property that is added to our historic district has to become part of is a new addition to the zoning ordinance. I've also worked on a couple other zoning ordinance changes, including just like changing, one was tattoo parlors, for example, just where those can go in the city and what districts. And then last year, so in 2023, the Rhode Island State Legislature made a ton of changes to land use policy. I think there were 13 major decisions made. And so we had to completely rewrite our zoning ordinance and all of our land use regulations. So I worked very closely with a consultant and our zoning director to basically go through and rewrite the entire thing, which was quite a project, but that was very good experience, and it helped me better understand just how policy is written and what language to use and things like that.
Just as a follow-up, Dartmouth is a town run by select board and a town meeting, whereas if I caught you right, Pawtucket is a city.
Yes.
So you're dealing with the mayor and a city council.
Yes.
Describe your experience, or do you have any experience speaking in front of large groups like a town meeting?
Yes. So I have done both public meetings, so just educational presentations specifically. So our hazard mitigation plan had to be rewritten, so I've been working on that for the past year and a half or so. And so presenting both to our city council as well as to the general public on that, going in front of city council for various things, and having to go on and explain what the planning department is doing to city council. So yeah, I think if you Google me, you can find me quoted in the local Valley Breeze. But so yes, I do have experience going in front of larger groups. Yes, and then the planning commission sometimes gets a fair audience depending on what's going in front of it.
Got it.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep.
So if you were chosen for this position, how would you get up to speed and become a subject matter expert on town bylaws?
I think just spending the first, couple weeks really dedicating time to going through and reading everything in the bylaws, just to get kind of a sense of where to find things if I need to look them up. I think I'd probably also reach out to other departments to get a sense of what is important to those other departments. So I currently work very closely with our zoning department, so I might be reaching out to the zoning department here to see what is important to know about that, and then what other departments do to interact with planning, so that if they have questions coming up in the future, that I would be able to answer those, and know what kinds of things are the most important to be focusing on. And I think just the more familiar it becomes, and the more so my current zoning ordinance of the city of Pawtucket has a million different sticky notes of all of the places that I have had to look up, and where to find what information. So probably doing something similar.
Okay. And then as a quick follow-up, We were looking for somebody that was accredited. Is that something that you would be willing to work on?
Yes. So you have to be, I believe, to get the AICP, you need to have 3 years dedicated to working in planning, and currently I only have 2. So even though my background in project management really helps with this kind of position, I think after I reach that 3-year point, that is definitely a goal of mine to be able to achieve that.
Thank you.
What is your view on economic development, and how would you promote smart growth in the town of Dartmouth?
That is a good question. So I think I tend to go back to what's in the zoning ordinance and what the zoning map looks like, and really targeting places that, you know, are within that area of commercial zoning, and so that it can protect areas of residential and maintain established neighborhoods as well as agricultural uses and things like that. But if there are opportunities to find additional space around those commercial areas, and then I think just also promoting, as I said earlier, I'm very pro-infrastructure, and being able to really show that Dartmouth can be a place where, you know, everything is running smoothly, and it's a really great place to be doing business. So I think it's a little hard for me to go into any kind of specifics on this, because I haven't dived into, you know, what the business development plan of the town is. But I would say that would be my start.
Well, as my planning board partner over here Nick asked you, we really need housing.
Yes.
We have Route 6, which is commercial, and we have some large developments there that also have extra land in the back. And because of my background in real estate, how do you feel about multi-use with these? If you go into some of the other cities down south, you will see commercial and multifamilies or condos or apartments mixed in. What's your feeling on that?
I tend to look at especially the multifamily or larger apartment buildings as almost kind of a commercial endeavor in and of itself. I think there's a difference between having, you know, established residential neighborhoods with 1 or 2 family residences that have been there forever, and those people want to be able to maintain their neighborhoods. But being able to create larger apartment buildings or things like that around commercial areas, I think is actually a very good idea. Because then you also have the population of people who can then just go down and get the commercial, or be able to like walk to their grocery store or walk to any commercial needs that they might have. And it attracts a different type of person, and not just necessarily families who might want the single family in the neighborhood, but then younger people or people who just graduate from UMass wanting to stay in the town and still be able to live there. So I tend to think of apartment buildings as that in between, that it could go in a residential neighborhood, but it can also go in commercial.
Thank you.
Ideally, a planning director possesses both short and long-range planning skills. Can you give an example of a long-range project that you felt was challenging yet successful? And I'm going to share a follow-up with you, perhaps one that might fit within the scope of Dartmouth.
So I would go back to our hazard mitigation plan as one example. That is something that we've been working on for a year and a half, and we just submitted it to FEMA and Rhode Island EMA, and that set out a list of about 29 action items for the city to strive for over the next 5 years. And that included climate justice, it includes dealing with certain elements of flooding or targeting certain areas of the city that we really want to increase infrastructure, and then also the community education piece and community outreach. So I would say on the planning side, there's that piece. And then as a much longer range project, I've been working on, since I started with the city of Pawtucket, there is the Blackstone River Bikeway, which is intended to run from Worcester all the way down to Bristol. There's a few chunks missing. One of the largest ones is through Pawtucket. So that has been a project that's been in the works since the 80s. And they've started construction on one piece of it. I've been focused on the northern part that has just been lying dormant for over a decade. And we started getting I've been calling it the pre-permitting phase, so that identifying all of the issues that might come up with the permitting, the kind of path that we want, so that we can then now take the next step to actually get those permits and deal with the agencies that are going to be the most difficult, so that we can actually get that moving forward. So it's not just going to be, the one chunk of this bike path that's missing.
I have a quick follow-up regarding hazard mitigation for a planning board like ours. A lot of our weekly or biweekly tasks are project-related. They have a beginning and an end. They come and go. Hazard mitigation, I have to believe, goes on forever through eternity, right?
Mm-hmm.
What should a planning board like us consider in terms of time management for hazard mitigation? Should it be on our agenda once a month? Should it be twice annually? What would you propose for a town like us?
So I think it depends. I also think, yes, hazard mitigation goes on eternally. But I think under that scope, and what I mentioned with the 29 action items, is that when you identify specific issues, then those are things that will come up when they come up. So I don't think it's necessarily a monthly thing or bi-monthly thing. Rather, if there is an issue that needs to be addressed or an anticipated issue that really needs to be focused on to prevent that from coming, I think those specific projects should be treated like individual projects. So it's more the foresight of what we would be looking towards to do.
Thank you.
What skills are you hoping to develop in this position? How have you approached professional development in the past?
So I have found that in every job that I have had, I have learned plenty of things, both that I expected and that I didn't expect. I think, so right now I am the assistant director, so I think in this role, taking on that next step of responsibility would be a really amazing learning opportunity for me, so that, because being someone who is the head of a department versus someone who serves right under the head of the department, of gaining that, I don't want to say confidence, but the equivalent of making those decisions and being able to say, my word is the word of the department. I do that on an extent now, but I can be overruled. So I think that would be the biggest learning opportunity for me. In my current role, I had done some trainings in staff management before, but that has been a huge piece of my job now, and now I have a staff of multiple people who I have completely trained, and who look to me for pretty much everything. So that's been probably the most interesting piece of my current job. And then any other increase in responsibility, project management taught me a lot, both in time management, in how to balance multiple projects at a time, in being able to take control of the whole timeline of projects and really see them all the way through. And then working in municipal government and running boards and commissions. That's also, so working in the public sector has taught me a lot. And that was something that I wasn't necessarily expecting to learn from my current job, but it's been a real benefit to me. And it's kind of been a lot of fun for me to see how the municipal process of government works. So, it's a lot of things.
Let's just go from our board. you guys have had 2 questions each, so can we just get it?
Absolutely.
Great, thank you. Mr. Tattlebaum?
Thanks for firing, answering all the questions. Doing a fine job. I take it you report to the city planner,
The Director of Planning.
director of
yes.
planning. What would that person say about you?
So I think, I don't, so we had, I had my birthday over the summer, and so people went around and said one word about me, and I think she said that I was indispensable. So, I cover the Planning Commission and the day-to-day operations of the department, and so I know that she definitely values what I can contribute.
Nice word. Thank you.
Mr. O'Neill?
Cameron, I think we had touched on this in our last interview, but the technical review meetings, as you know, in Dartmouth are pretty important and we've got some pretty decent-sized projects coming up. So if you can explain your level of experience with various aspects of project development, fire, public works, conservation, and some examples of that experience.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a technical review committee in the city, and I am the staff person for that. So I have set a day every month where I bring together the fire department, public works, engineering, zoning, building, planning. We don't have a conservation commission, but just all of any relevant department. And so any projects that are coming in front of the planning commission, or that we may have going in front of city council that need additional review. So we all get together in a room and we talk about the different aspects of the project, what might be concerns for fire and access and fire alarms, and for stormwater management in terms of engineering, and they might have concerns about that. So it's really looking at the entire view of a project, and then as the staff of that, or the leader, I guess, of that committee, I'm the one who takes all of the notes and gets all the conditions together so that any concerns that come about from any of the departments get written down, and then that gets presented to our planning commission as proposed conditions for approval of the project, or if there are too many conditions that we would recommend that the project get reworked a bit, depending on what agencies are most concerned, or departments rather, not agencies.
One more, Sean?
Yeah, go ahead.
How would you describe your management style? You do have some people underneath you in your other position, but in town we've got one staff member, the director, and the board members. What's it been like in the past with management of people? How do you deal with difficult situations, say in a technical review where you're really at loggerheads with the department head? How have you had any experience trying to get around those issues?
Yeah, so I guess in terms of management for staff that are under me, I have a very open door policy. So anytime there's any concern or question, I much rather would have my staff come and talk to me about it before anything comes up. But I do have more of I would encourage my staff to try it for themselves first, so that they can, with all the trainings that I've done for my staff, I want to see where they're at, and then giving them feedback on what they've done so that they can actually give it a shot themselves, so they can learn by doing. And then I will go through and review what they've done. When there have been disagreements between either myself and my director, or myself and other departments, usually being able to just look at the concerns of each party and see what would have the greatest impact. And there's almost always a compromise that can be reached. So I think my director at one point wanted to kind of give, to move forward on one project, and I was saying, well, they still have a lot of requirements that they have not met yet. So allowing them to get, a foundation permit rather than a whole building permit, so that they can still move forward on their project, and then, but still allowing us to get all the things that we need before any buildings start going up. So, yep.
Mrs. Brooks?
Thank you. If you were sitting on this side of the table, what traits would you be looking for in that candidate?
I would think confidence, the ability to take on a number of challenges, experience with having to deal with problems and finding solutions to those problems, and the ability to learn and learn quickly.
Thank you.
Great answer.
Mr. Mickelson?
Good evening. So, what project are you most proud of during your time in Pawtucket?
I know I keep bringing it up, but I think it is because I'm the most proud of it is our hazard mitigation plan. It taught me the most about the city, having to do so much background research on what Pawtucket really is and who the people are, as well as coming up with these action items that say, these are the things that we find the most important, and this is the infrastructure that we need, and these are the real problems that people are having, and flooding has been a huge problem in Pawtucket with just the however many 1 in 500-year rain events that we have had over the past 2 years. And people who have also come to me and said, my apartment is flooding, my house is flooding. What can I do? How can I contribute to this to be able to move forward? And the conversations that I've had with the public have been incredible. And really being able to help them during this process, I've learned a lot during the process. And being able to direct those people who need help immediately to where they need to go, as well as then incorporating their feedback into this plan that's going to be affecting the city for the next 5 years. So I would say that one. It's kind of had a little bit of everything.
So your Pawtucket is what, 75,000 people? So it's a good size.
75 to 80.
Yeah, yeah. We're not quite there yet. But we have other issues going on with advancing projects. We've got a sewer and water treatment issue that we have to be very, very careful about. We've got a 40B project that's has no shovel in the ground for 4 years already, for whatever reason that is.
Yep.
But the biggest issue is taking care of our water and our clean water. And the more and more we look at large projects, the more and more we're going to put pressure on that system to the point where it'll bust.
Yep.
And there might be at some point, not me personally, but I've heard rumors that there could be a moratorium. And how would that affect your job? Especially for larger projects, say 12 buildings or more for either single family or multiple family on one area, in one area, specific area.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, you mean a moratorium on drawing water? I mean, I think that just shifts focus of what the priority then becomes for what projects would be. And instead of prioritizing more building, it would be prioritizing finding out what grants that can be found or what can be done to better fix the water supply or the sewer capacity. Sewer is something that we're also dealing with in Pawtucket, and that's an ongoing project. And it has put a lot of strain on certain projects. So I think it really just is a shift of focus, that if you can't draw more water, then the priority cannot be on more building.
Of course, we're working on it, there's no question
Yes,
about it.
absolutely.
But that elephant in the room is still there, and it's not going away so quickly. So just for your own common knowledge.
Yep.
I'm sure you've read about our issues.
I've seen.
Yes,
But
thank you.
All right, we've got about 12 minutes, so 7 o'clock is where we're going to end it. So I'd like to give her at least 5 minutes of that time. So if there's any additional questions, Mr. Mello, you can go right ahead.
I have one question. Right now, you have a staff. How many people do you oversee that you're directly responsible for?
I'm directly responsible for, I think, 4 people who report directly to me.
Thank you.
And if chosen, when could you start?
I could start within a few weeks. There's things at my current job that would need to be taken care of and things that I still need to do there, but within a couple weeks.
All right. So do you have any questions for us?
What would you think that the biggest challenge facing this position would be?
I think you're going to get 9 different answers on that one. Go for it.
Consensus building, I think that anytime you have a bunch of different departments that are operating relatively independently with their own goals, their own ways of being, and as our environment, not just the environment, but our whole building and development environment progresses, everybody's got different kinds of opinions, and I think that the consensus building would be important.
Thank you.
Margaret, anything?
No, I think that she has answered this. Do you feel confident that this position is a fit for you at this point?
I think so.
Okay.
I feel that it's definitely within my wheelhouse, and I think that, within a month or two of kind of getting my feet underneath me, it would be a really great challenge, as well as just, I would be very proud to work in Dartmouth and on the South Coast. I just have such love for this area, so.
Well, I know at the last interview, you said that you used to spend a lot of time in Dartmouth because
Yes.
you had friends from Stang, I guess you said, Bishop Stang?
Who went to UMass.
Yeah, okay, you went to UMass. So you have a lot of people that perhaps live here still that you're friendly with?
I know some.
Okay.
People have kind of moved all over the place, but my family still lives in Mattapoisett, so I'm still in the area quite a bit.
Thank you.
My closing remark, may I?
Yes.
Yeah, my closing remarks would be that I'm hopeful that if you're the chosen candidate, that you'll be able to recognize, although we are one and we are proud, we're a very proud community as the town of Dartmouth, we still remain segregated some. The north from the south, what Route 6 means, what each side of it means, the 14 zoning districts, 11 classes of them. I'm just hopeful that whoever our director is, they will help facilitate process, growth, development in respect of all of the town, and that we step aside from perhaps the boundaries that we know, and we ask ourselves, are we making any progress for the town? Best of luck.
I'd like to just, if I could answer that question regarding challenges. My perspective of the planning board is a unique combination of day-to-day pick and shovel work that you face week after week after week, and you have to face it and do it, and I admire you doing it. But you have to then be able to pull yourself away from that and look at the big picture, whether it be water or development or whatever issue comes along. And I think that is the unique priority that I think leadership brings to the planning board, because you can get wrapped up in the day-to-day awfully easily because that's what the job is. But as a town, we need to look at the big picture, often a big distance, and do that on a more regular basis. And I think that's the biggest challenge myself.
Okay. All right, I'm going to close off the questioning from both boards. So Cameron, you have the floor if you want to make a pitch for your, at the end, and just, it's all yours.
I think I've said most of what I've wanted to say. But I would also say that this has been just a wonderful opportunity. I was so excited to get the call that you wanted me to come back. And I'm nervous, but I'm thrilled to be here. So I just want to say thank you.
The nervousness is very easy to stop because one of the most difficult things a person can do is to sell themselves.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, without being, you have to throw some humility into it, you have some humbleness, but you also have to throw in a very large ego. And it's very difficult to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So we thank you for applying, we thank you for showing up tonight. You've definitely given me something very serious to think about. Just to let you know on an aside, I'm very familiar with the city of Pawtucket. My father was on the school committee. My brother was on some other committee over there. I have no idea where he is now, but fully aware of what's going on in Pawtucket because I work in Rhode Island also. So I know what's going on. So I appreciate you coming here. Thank you. Okay. What's going to happen now is we're just going to interview another candidate, and then we're going to decide. We're going to matriculate and decide on what's going on. And, Denise from HR will definitely contact you either way. So, okay?
Wonderful.
Great. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
For coming out. Pleasure
Thank
to
you,
meet
Cameron.
Yes, please.
Yep.
So here we go. Good evening, Mr. Giosa. How are you?
Doing well.
All right. What's going to happen is we've got roughly 45 minutes for an interview, more or less. We'll have a series of questions. Planning board will be up first. There'll be a round of questions, and there'll be a round of questions from the board. Personally, I won't be asking any. I like to hear everybody else's. And then after that, there may be a follow-up on each question.
Okay.
If there's something that you have said that we need a little more clarification or it kind of piques somebody's interest, there may be an additional question for that. The format is this. You'll have the floor to open up the floor to introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about yourself. Then the questions begin, and then there'll be, after that, you have the opportunity to ask us any questions, and then you have the summation. And at that point, we thank you for your time, and then we sit down and matriculate.
Sounds like
So-
a plan.
So, the floor is yours.
Good evening. My name is Daniel Giosa. I'm a resident here in town. I live up off of Reed Road in one of the subdivisions up there. I've been there for over 20 years with my wife, who we've been married for 26 years.
Excuse me, you want to pull the microphone closer to you?
Sure.
Thank you. Sorry to interrupt you.
My wife is a school teacher, elementary school teacher here in town. We have two daughters, 19 and 22, that came up through the Dartmouth school system. We're involved in many activities here in town. My wife and I were volunteers in various capacities and various youth activities. I'm a current town meeting member and former Conservation Commission member. From a professional standpoint, I graduated in 1998 from UMass Dartmouth with a bachelor's degree in engineering. Upon graduation, I worked at SciTech Engineering for about 25 years here in town. As a project manager, project engineer, did everything from contracts, proposals, billing, invoicing. From a design standpoint, worked with many of the departments here in town. For a planning standpoint, worked from everything from residential, site plans, state lot subdivisions, approval not required subdivisions, Form Cs, anywhere from small family neighborhood subdivisions to 20 plus. OSRD, open space residential designs, street determination plans. Also, on the commercial side, various different site plans, parking plans, grading, drainage, coastal projects, docks, revetment walls. Not in Dartmouth, but also in other towns, worked on solar farm projects as well. For the past 2.5 years, I've been an engineer here with the Town of Dartmouth's Department of Public Works. In that capacity, done construction inspections, reports, research for citizens, contractors, engineers on utility information, regulatory information. I've had the opportunity to collaborate with many of the town's departments, including Planning Board. I help with review of subdivision plans, site plans, so I have been able to work with a lot of the departments here in town. So I have a good basis of all the different boards that I had previous relationships with, but it's been nice to work in a different capacity over the past few years.
Okay. All
about
right,
it.
great. All right, so let the grilling begin. Mr. Miller?
Do we want to introduce?
Okay.
We want to introduce?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. Thank you. Well, he should know, I think he knows everybody here, but as mentioned in protocol, we'll just introduce the members of our board and then the planning board.
Dave Tattlebaum, Select Board Member.
Stanley Mickelson.
Sean McDonald, Chairman.
Heidi Brooks.
Chris O'Neill?
Kevin Estes, Vice Chair.
Kevin Mello?
Margaret Sweet, clerk.
Nicholas Cyclepatis.
Okay, Mr. Mello, the floor is yours.
Okay, so thank you for telling us a bit about yourself, your work-related experiences, and you are familiar with the bulk of your work is from Massachusetts.
Correct. We did do a little bit of work in Rhode Island, a couple projects in Connecticut, but the majority of it has been regulatory work in Massachusetts.
Okay, thank you.
In regard to planning, what do you feel are the biggest challenges facing a town such as Dartmouth in the next 10 years? And how would you go about addressing them?
Telling I have a 19 and a 22-year-old, I think one of the biggest issues is affordable housing, different kind of housing projects. I'm sure everybody's aware, for somebody just coming out of college, like my oldest daughter, I'd like her to be able to stay living in town in the area. It's not quite feasible right now. I think there's different ways to go about it. I know in the previous interview we talked about it a little bit, so sorry for repeating myself, but I know that we have a couple areas of town, the Route 6 corridor, Fons Corner Road corridor, where I think there's some potential for some mixed use. I know, being on the engineering side now, there's a few apartment projects that are coming through now, a few that have been recently approved. I think that's something that can definitely be looked at. A couple other things I know that are coming through are in the works. The accessory dwelling units, I think, will have a big impact, allowing for that transition to be able to have residents in town try to save up some money while you're living in that kind of residence. Coming next year, a lot of the merger rules are shifting a little bit, which I think is going to open up some property chances in town too. So I think that's going to give people of town opportunity to look at some properties that have kind of been off the books for the past few years, and I think that'll give us another option.
Well, I'm just going to ask one further question about this because you brought it up at the last time we talked about it.
Yep.
I believe in multi-use buildings and multi-use areas of town. There's several malls along Route 6 that have a lot of land, as you well know, behind them.
Correct.
I'm, again, pushing for housing for elderly, okay? So how do you feel about mixing elderly with some of those commercial projects?
We meaning SciTech, have done projects in other towns where there is that mixed use, where you can do a few different things. You have, your first floor, you could have storefront. That's beneficial to those residential communities too, whether it's convenience, pharmacy, different things that benefit the residents that will also be living there. From a design standpoint, it doesn't really add to some of the negatives. Impervious, there's a lot of issues, which I know most of you are aware, with new state regs, new town regs regarding drainage. So by doing a lot of that mixed use, you're allowing the same footprint, but you can get that multi-use, you can get that elderly housing or younger family housing at a much more reasonable price. So I definitely think that's a good project to look into.
Thank you, Jen.
This position requires excellent verbal and written communication skills. Can you describe your experience with public speaking in building consensus amongst various stakeholders and give some examples of high-level legal written documents you may have developed?
The first part, I've been in front of many boards, departments in a public speaking engagement, so I feel very comfortable with that. In the position I'm in now, we get calls daily from the general public, so we're constantly engaging in conversations with those kind of situations. So I'm more, I guess people call me old school. I like picking up the phone or meeting in person. I know emails serve a lot of good purposes. You can get things out quickly, information that you don't have to take a long time with, little quick information here and there. But I personally am a get on the phone conversation with somebody, meet in person. In this town specifically, I know, like the technical reviewers meeting before that, it used to be department head meetings. We used to be able to come in, get that face-to-face time. Previous planning directors would be more than willing to meet ahead of time, give you your feedback. What was the question about the legal documents?
The follow-up would be regarding documentation. Would you feel pressured to produce higher-level documentation that would be disseminated amongst towns, SERPED, or perhaps even proposed to the state level, coming from our planning director, and/or would you look for help to do that?
As part of my previous profession, we wrote documents to state departments, legal issues, DEP for environmental issues, legal decisions to the planning boards. Board of Health had issues, conservation. On the conservation side, when I was on there were issues that came up that had some legality to it that Mr. O'Reilly at the time did the majority of the heavy lifting on that, but, we were also involved in determining that information. So no, I wouldn't have any issue with that.
If you were chosen for the position, how would you get up to speed and become a subject matter expert with our town and bylaws?
I think I'm already starting off on a good foot because I work with a lot of these regulatory boards right now. We were just looking at something today on a job that just came in, and we had some concern about a parking lot setback that I remembered from previous jobs. I might not remember, it's been 2 years exactly where it is, but I know where to look for it. So I'm very familiar with the regulatory boards. I work with the planning staff right now doing review of plans, so I'm constantly updating on that information. So, and I'm here in town, so I think it's something I could transition to very easy, and whatever the plan would be, I'm right here. I get out at 3:30, I can swing over, kind of go over stuff. Like I said, I know most of the projects that are going on in town right now because I do have some involvement with it, so I think it could be a very smooth transition.
Just as a follow-up, you've got a lot of experience inside the town, which is unique, and can be a fantastic asset and particular strength to get off to a fast start. Do you think, is there any way that your experience might hamper some of your initial effectiveness?
I'm trying to. I don't think about. I'm trying to think of one. I obviously I know a lot of the engineers, a lot of the contractors, a lot of the builders. So I think they might view me in a different mentality to start with, but I have a pretty strong personality to nip that in the bud, I think. But to come up with one answer for that, I would say maybe that would be the thing that I would have to, say, hey, I'm wearing a different hat now. This is where the view I'm coming from now, as opposed to the view I was coming from. That might be a little bit different.
Thank you.
And just a quick follow-up for that. One of the things that we were looking for is somebody with AICP accreditation. Is that something that you would work towards if given the position?
We talked about that the last one. I did do a lot of research on it. The way it's set up for a person with me that's coming from an engineering background, they'd be looking for 4 years of experience before I could take the test. The test is pretty straightforward. There's nothing else I have to take for classes or anything for the test. So it's really just getting the experience in. There's a little bit of leeway in there that maybe it could be a little bit quicker time if I am in there to be able to do it. When you read through and you see, there's a lot of things, is it worth it getting the AICP certifications? A lot of it references, that it was kind of set up to kind of be on equal footing with engineers and architects. So I think I'm coming from a good base where I'd have similar knowledge, but from sitting in that seat, I think it's something additionally good to have, but it's not something, based on what I've been able to research and find, that I can guarantee would be something I could get within a couple of years. It might be 4 or 5 years down the road. But I looked at what the test would entail. It's basically, trying to just do an online study class. They had flashcards. It's a lot of just kind of knowledge. It has a lot of like urban planning, a lot of history of different planning techniques. So it's more just learn what they're asking for. A lot of the same similarities and stuff that I've dealt with from an engineering standpoint. So it's definitely something I think would be advantageous, but it's just something that's going to it would take a little bit of time
Sure.
to get to that point.
But you would be willing to do that?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Dan, I'm gonna go back to the question that Mr. Mello asked, because at the last interview, I thought you were not looking forward to doing that, and when I asked, you said you didn't think that you would pursue that.
I'm sorry if I missed. I didn't think it was something I would need to start. I don't think it's something that I'm missing to be able to perform the duties of the planning director, but it's not something that I would be opposed to ever getting. It's just something, like I said, it's not something that I would want to say, yeah, I can get it next year. It's something that's going to take a little bit of time down the road before I can apply for that certification.
So, in other words, I guess your answer now is yes, you would pursue it in the future?
Yes. In the future.
Okay.
I just want to be clear, it's something that's going to take a little bit of time.
Thank you. Ideally, a planning director possesses both short and long-term range planning skills. Can you give an example of a long-range project that you felt was challenging, that you were very successful in doing with the town?
From a long-range standpoint, most of the projects are, it's stuff that they're trying to get done quickly. Going back to some of the other things we did for boards with, both my daughters were big into the sports projects. So with DGAL, which was kind of the softball, basketball, and soccer with the soccer fields, I did some work with that for long-term planning for future field options. I worked when I was with Conservation with Mr. O'Reilly, looking at options with this piece of property to see if there were any expansions for that. So from that viewpoint, we looked at long-term information. When I was on Conservation Commission, looked at long-term planning for open space and recreation, conservation of land. But as far as the projects I worked on, it was more short-term.
We talked about housing also before. Have you worked on any 40Bs or 40Rs or?
Yep. There's one going on in town right now that I started on early on, and then I left to come to the town. We did one in Rainham. There's another one, I just can't picture where it was, but yeah, I have been involved in those before.
Thanks, Dan.
Yep.
Dan?
Yep.
What skills are you hoping to develop in this position? How have you approached professional development in the past?
For professional development standpoint, I'm an EIT, so I had to go for further work on that. Licensed soil evaluator, so I had to, I have to do continuing education credits on that for development. As far as skills for this project, I know another of my colleagues at SciTech, he went and became a city planner in another city. So I have that resource available to me too as well. And he told me one of the big benefits, and if I was offered this position, there's a lot of resources at Serped. So that's something that I would want to look into for development. In that case, learn different things that'll help this town develop and grow going forward.
Thank you.
If chosen, when could you start?
From a professional standpoint, in the position I have, I would like to think I would at least like to give my current position 3 weeks at a minimum, I would think. But I think, like I said, it's in town, so it's definitely something that we can transition and work on. If the position is offered, that's something I can talk to them as soon as I know it's there, and we can work out an exit strategy. But from a professional standpoint, I think I would like to at least give them that much leeway.
Dan, thanks for all your answers.
Yep.
It's kind of, this be case a two-part question. When you were at SciTech, which was only 2 years ago, you reported to whom, and what would that person say about you?
Well, it was my father.
Okay.
Which is why I didn't put him down as a recommendation, because I think he would probably be a little too over the top in his review. But the first call I made when I saw, obviously, like I said, working with the planning department, I knew pretty early on that the position was going to be open. He was one of the first calls I made. I still, when projects are still going on town, I have 25 years experience in town. He's got about 45 years experience. So the things I don't know, he probably knows. And even, doing research in all these projects in town, I come across his name all the time. So it's definitely a great wealth of knowledge that I have at my disposal.
Who about, and the person who you report to now here in town?
Directly, it's Paul Dudot. He's a senior engineer, and then beyond him, Timothy Barber, who's the director.
How's it going with Paul, what would you say?
Very well. I think we work well together. It's two people that have experience from the private side as well, so we can bounce things off of each other. When he's reviewing something, he can, hey, what do you think about this? Maybe I'm viewing this a little bit differently. What do you think about how this can be achieved? When he's writing letters, I'll review his letters for plan review, for site review, for document review. One of the newer regulations that came into the new zoning for stormwater, something that's still kind of in the process of being implemented for projects. So we get to work together and collaborate on stuff like that.
Thank you, Dan.
Yep.
Chris?
Dan, in the prior positions that you've had, have you had any direct reports to you, even in the town position now?
I just missed what the...
Any direct reports, anybody underneath you that you had to manage?
Yeah, so we had at SciTech, we had junior engineers that would work before us, would coordinate field work, coordinate research, whether it's utility research, property research, any kind of information like that. Have them do filings for you document, all the forms you have to fill out, can do stuff like that. Smaller, if I'm doing a subdivision plan, they could do a septic plan or a site plan for utility plans. So we had that kind of flow of plans.
What do you think their comment would be on your management style?
I'd like to give them time to work out problems. At first, it's going to take you a little bit longer. from a private side, you're not gonna meet budgets on the jobs, but I'd rather see them struggle a little bit rather than just come to me and ask me to do the whole thing for them. So, let them struggle with it a little bit, learn the regulations, come up with their own questions, come to me, say, this is what it is. Allow them to make mistakes, correct them on it, and say, want to look, so this is what I want to see out of the next plan you do, the next filing you want to do. Have a little responsibility. Everything's deadline based, so give them some leeway to learn the process and work with schedules and filing requirements.
Mrs. Brooks?
Okay, I'm going to just go back to one of the questions that was missed earlier. What is your view on economic development, and how would you promote smart growth in the town of Dartmouth?
It's something specific, as far as commercial development,
Economic development, well, however you want to spin that.
Well, we have a good process here where we have a multi-phase tax base, so we have different areas of town that are set up very nicely coming from previous planning directors. So it allows us to have a good commercial base in town that we can work to promote that in certain areas while still promoting, the residential development in other areas. So I think it's important to make sure we're still have the ability to allow those different kind of developments to take place in town, so the tax base does continue to be able to grow, and making sure we're zoned properly for those different activities as they're coming in.
All right, and then my question to you is, if you were sitting here, what would you be looking for in the candidate sitting where you are?
Being on the private side, looking to see what works well in a planning director or any department director, communication is huge. Like I said, I like being able to have conversations with people. I want to make sure if somebody comes in and has questions, you're available to take the time to answer those questions well. Want to make sure there's no discrepancy in what they're looking for and what you're telling them. So I think in communication with other boards, I know with the portal now, there's different departments okay certain things on permits, but it doesn't mean you get one permit, it doesn't mean you're ready to put a shovel in the ground. You got to make sure you have all the other permits. So I think it's important to be able to communicate with all the other departments too as well, and know you're not, the permits you're given as a planning department aren't in a vacuum. There's always other requirements, conservation, building department requirements, could be other permits involved. So I think communication is the big thing I would be looking for.
Thank you.
Stanley?
Yes. Hi, Daniel.
Good.
Nice to see you.
You too.
So, Daniel, you wouldn't feel any conflict of interest prior to these 24 years that you've been in your other business?
No, I think these 2.5 years.
Get through that pretty
Yeah,
easily?
Yeah, I think through these 2.5 years, it's been well. I'm out on construction sites all the time with the different developers and engineers, and I got a book with me. I said, these are the regulations. These are the details you need to go. This is what I'm looking for. So no, I don't foresee any issues with any conflicts of interest.
That brings me to the 40B project that you somehow worked on 4 years without a shovel in the ground.
It's starting.
Well, I know you had a meeting today, but
Yeah, and I didn't, but yes, I know.
it's well overdue. The town
Yeah.
is losing an enormous amount of taxes.
Yep.
You could, in that 5-year period, we could have had 4 buildings up.
Yeah, I'm not sure I was kind of out of the loop on a lot of that stuff.
No,
from
no,
what
I'm sure you
happened,
were.
Because I know it's a special permit through the zoning board, so there's not there hasn't been a lot of DPW
No, I'm familiar with that.
going on that,
Yeah,
so.
Unfortunately, but
Yeah.
hopefully that moves along
But
quickly.
yeah, like you said, it was back, I've been here 2.5 years, and I want to say it was like you said, it was probably Probably more than 5 years from when it started.
So what project are you most proud of in the 24 years you've been at your business?
Kind of like picking your favorite kid, right? There's a few residential subdivisions that I can think of. You're starting from a blank slate, you're kind of looking at the property, you're like, you don't really know how this is gonna look, depending on what the previous things were. There was one I actually just drove through maybe about a month ago in Lakeville, and to see the finished project, the layout, how everything looked, when you see the final landscaping, the way the houses were laid out. That project came out really nice. There was a big project in Raynham that came out really nice. In Dartmouth, the last subdivision I worked on and got permitted before I came here, the Westview Estates subdivision, that was I thought a very perfect example of the OSRD project, where you got to preserve all that land along the river. You got to cluster the lots in a way that worked well with the landscape. Still some more work to go in there, but I think that project is going to be a really nice.
And lastly, as you know, we have serious water and sewer issues.
Correct.
And with that, and with more and more projects coming up, we'll be taxing that severely. Can we handle it? I know there's some talk about some type of a moratorium at some point on larger projects, say 12 buildings or more, multi-use or private use. I'm not saying that I'm for it or not for it, but there's talk about it. But that would change your job classification quite a bit. What would you do to handle that if there were a moratorium?
From that, just assuming that's the case, because I think there's still some options
I'm not saying that's going to ever be
available.
the case.
But assuming that is the case, then that's obviously something we need to look at. Does it become more of a development in cases where you can sit on-site septic systems and wells? I know there's a project coming into the town right now where water wasn't feasible to run it to that location, so as well, it's going to be a public water supply well, so that brings its own issues. But there are workarounds in a lot of cases. There are some spots that, it might take a little time for those capital improvements to kick in, but I think in the short term, there are some things we can do to try to make those projects still be viable.
Thank you. Let him ask questions.
Go ahead. Planning board.
So we did get a little out of order, but so brings us down to, do you have any questions for us?
I guess my main question, both for the select board and planning board separately, how would you view the interaction with the planning director and the board as far as communication, planning for meetings, agendas, stuff like that? How do you see anything we haven't talked about tonight?
So the way we've handled it with the last 3 planners that I've had in my duration on the board is that the chairperson and the planner work out the agenda, and other board members can add to the agenda
Okay.
as requested.
So it's more of a direct conversation first with the chairman.
Correct.
And things can work out.
And any member can ask for any item to be put on. Basically, a need certain deadlines, as you're aware of.
Correct.
Application dates.
Yep.
It's the town planner's responsibility to make sure we meet the deadlines. And also, we would like to get back to some long-term planning in addition to our daily work.
I actually look forward to that. That was one of the descriptions for the essential functions, looking at some of the stuff from long-term planning. I did a little bit from different components of it for through conservation, other things, so that's something that's pretty exciting. Like we talked about a little bit briefly with, I'm hoping my future generations can stay here, so that's something that I would definitely be looking forward to being involved in.
I can give you the select board's view on working with other boards. Planning board is an elected board. We have absolutely no jurisdiction on the planning board. They have no jurisdiction on us. But we work as a partner in trying to make this town a little bit better. And I think the expectations of both boards is that the staff that is part of our world, which would be our town administrator, assistant town administrator, and your world of the planning board would be the planning director, work collaboratively for the betterment, and that if there's any situations that come up that need to be addressed, that it automatically come up right away, and to deal with it on an entire town level. Staff meets regularly. I believe once a month they have a department head meeting. So there is, and there's also, you know, what's it called? Technical review, right. So there is a technical review
Yeah,
that
I've done
everybody
a
meets.
few of those.
Right. So, I mean, our expectation is that staff work together for one purpose and one purpose only, and that's to make this town a little bit better every day. And I think that's something that we strive for. Sometimes it's difficult to achieve, but we try, you know. And I know Nick had brought it up, you know, there's this invisible wall that runs along Allen Street, you know, where it's north versus south. You know, we try to knock that down every day because the post office created north and south.
I tell people that all the time.
Right. And, you know, and if you really want to get technical, there are 4 zip codes in the town of Dartmouth.
Right.
So, and if you don't know
I-
who the
I-
other
I-
2 are, we'll go look for them.
I know where they are. I'm a North Dartmouth. I'm up off of Reed Road, so I've been.
Right,
I've
and
been-
that's something that we all try to do, because this is just one town, and it doesn't make a difference where you go in this town. 5 minutes, any direction in this town, you're in a different section of the town, and there's a different look, a different feel, and I think that's what makes this town very unique and very livable to live in. And I think that's something that we want to strive to keep. So I think, in essence, the select board looks for a collaborative effort from all staff, all boards, no matter if they're elected or appointed, so.
I agree. I'm glad that's what you hear. Like I said, I've worked with most of the department heads in this town. They've all been great to work with. I think we've had good relationships in the past. And I agree, I know back when I worked with Mr. O'Reilly back in the day, we go around doing site visits, and you say a lot of people don't realize the different areas of town. They get kind of stuck in one little spot, and, you know, you got the beautiful DNRT places. You can, you know, go walk your dogs and enjoy that. You got the beautiful coastal beach areas. You got the farmland. You got the different areas. So I would definitely agree that that's a big benefit and something I take pride in. I've been a
Lived in this
Dartmouth
town,
resident
lived in
most
this
of my
town
time.
for over almost 55 years. I haven't seen half of it.
Yeah, it's
Okay,
crazy.
I've seen half of it, I haven't seen the other half. So it's a town that you definitely need to check out, so. All right, do you have any other questions of us?
No, I think that was my main question.
Okay. All right, so you have some time to wrap up everything, just to kind of sell yourself, which I know is probably the most difficult thing a person can do. So, but
Well, a lot of what you just said is the reason why I take pride in town. I moved to town when I was in elementary school. I met my wife actually in elementary school, so just from that standpoint, it's a great place. My kids have been involved in many different activities. I've worked in, you know, there's not too far you can drive down any street in town before you get to something that I've worked on that I take pride in, that I was a part of that project. This position, I worked for the DPW and engineering. When this position became available, this was something I thought my skill set and my experience, I could really benefit the town, put my little stamp on the town development. This isn't a planning position that I would look for, honestly, in any other town besides this town. I just would like to be the planning director of Dartmouth. If not, then I would stay in the engineering department in Dartmouth. So I appreciate the opportunity to give you my history and my story, and I appreciate the opportunity to interview for this position.
Well, we appreciate you applying, and we appreciate you coming forward and answering the questions. What's going to happen now is you're going to leave, and the boards will be discussing the matter, and then Denise from HR will be in contact, one way or the other.
Okay, great.
Okay? Thank you, Dan, appreciate it.
Thank you very much for the
Okay.
time.
All right, we're going to take about a 5-minute break just to kind of see if we can find someplace to cool down. Back in. Okay, thank you. All right, so we've had 2 candidates to interview. Thoughts? I'll let you guys lead.
I think it's, earlier, what I said, I hadn't interviewed anybody. That was just letting everyone know there's always a third option. Just like when your wife tells you to take out the trash, it's yes, no, or the third option.
There is no third
There is
option.
no
Yeah, I was
third
gonna
option.
say. I'm not even so sure no is a possibility.
When can I
In fact-
have your
in
wife
fact,
come
there's
over
only-
and take
There's
care
only
of
one
it?
option. There's only one
That's
option.
right, take it out.
Well, your wife should show up at my house.
My hair wore out from getting washed. So tough choice. Tough choice.
Yeah.
I'm sure that there's some strong opinions. And now we're at the point of saying, what's your opinion?
Yeah.
And I think we gotta go around the room and say, Kevin, what's your opinion? Nick?
Yeah.
Margaret, what's your opinion? So I'm interested in hearing everybody's opinion.
Same here. Now, I'll offer mine up because I didn't have any questions.
Where's Moonshine Corner?
As they were going through, and I was basically just doing a scoring on them, okay? The scoring that I have, unfortunately, there's 2 scores missing on one candidate versus the other. The other one had 14 scores, the one only had 12. But the scoring basically kind of came almost the same, 3.5 to 3.7. So each candidate has some very strong points, and each has a little bit on the weakness side. I like that both of them want to continue for, professional development. Looking at the position on paper, the AICP is preferred. It's not required.
Correct.
So I want to look at the work experience and how that work experience can relate to what we're looking for. And both of them are completely outstanding. Both have a knowledge of what it needs to be a planning director. Both of them have the knowledge to be a department head, because they've had people, working for them, but they're also in a position, where they can, so it is an interesting choice. I can tell you this, I can make a choice tonight.
I'm sorry, you can?
I can
Okay.
make a choice tonight. So it would be a difficult one, but I can definitely make a choice tonight. I can choose either one of these, either candidate for this position.
Well, I was at the interviews that they had, and I just have 2 comments, because they both are very qualified, okay? And as you heard me ask Dan, the first time I asked him, he said he did not think he was going to get certified. And tonight, he's changed his mind, which makes me happy, because I would like to have a certified planner, okay, for the town of Dartmouth. Not required, but I think it's good to have, okay? The only other issue I have, and it's not really an issue, and I've talked to Chris about this, okay, and I asked Chris to check. I don't want any perception from the audience. We're on Zoom now, but at any time, TV, DCTV. I just want to make sure that when Dan's father comes before us, that Dan has to recuse himself. The board, the selectmen, I think, know that, okay? Because I don't want a problem with other engineers, and I don't want any problems that, and that wasn't brought up, but I think, after talking to Chris, I guess, that Dan would have to recuse himself anytime SciTech came before.
Right, and I think that's a very valid point, but knowing Steve Giosa as over these years, I think Steve would probably forego any work in town,
Oh, I don't know.
most part.
I don't know, because Steve has.
Well, he's kind of retired now anyway, so he gets to pick and choose his clients.
Yeah, but he has a couple of big clients that.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, and one of them, we know is a big house builder. So I don't know that Steve could do that.
It's
And I wouldn't ask Steve to do that.
Right.
I'm just telling you my perception, okay?
No, and it would be, and if that was the person, then yes, there would be parameters set.
Right.
I have a question, follow-up on that. Is that going to, let's assume that Steve has lots of jobs and he's active and he's staying in town. What kind of burden is that going to put on the assistant planner and the board? Because your planner has to recuse himself on a fairly regular basis.
We have a strong assistant planner in the town right now. He is doing a fantastic job keeping the ship holding steady. It would be good experience for him from time to time.
I did ask, if you
You
remember.
did ask, Mr. Mickelson
about
did ask,
the conflict of interest, and he did answer it.
and that is
In a
true.
roundabout way, yes.
It is a black or white job. There's no playing favorites. This is a black or white. You either follow the guidelines or you're not following them.
Right.
So,
So as far as my comfort level and the group here, the planning board, you have to work with them, that you are willing to take on the conflict of issue, whether it be a little or a lot, because you're prepared to deal with it. Is that fair to say?
we are in a strong position to deal with it, yes.
Okay.
I can't speak, I'm the here and now, so yes. Next April, I can't speak for next April.
I understand.
I would say there would be more of a conflict of interest if one of the two of them was sitting on the board and the other was bringing a matter before the board. As an employee of the town, the planner doesn't really vote. They don't make a decision. Their job is to supply us with the appropriate amount of information to make a decision and to guide where we take our direction.
Regulatory, they have to follow, no matter who comes before you, have to follow regulations, and there's
Yeah.
regulatory things that they have to follow. So there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it, and there's no.
No funny business,
Yeah,
there's no
right.
gray.
There's, yeah,
no
exactly.
room for
There's no
gray.
gray
You're in
area.
compliance or you're not.
This is what if you need A, you get A. If you need B, you need B. You don't get C.
I understand the recusal so that there's no possible appearance of a conflict.
Right, it's the perception.
Right, which is
I
important.
would say that we would, I'm sorry, go ahead. Finish.
Done.
I would be very hesitant to approve something administratively, which is where we get it almost to the goal line. All right, well, we're going to approve it administratively, meaning the planner and the engineer are going to finish it up on their own. They know what our intent is as long as the planner satisfies that. That's the only time that I would feel like we should act differently.
Nick?
I don't mean to perhaps drastically change the narrative, but I'm concerned that we're talking about one candidate and how he may fit and what we as a board might be willing to do in terms of concessions to allow for such, but perhaps we should focus on the difference between qualified or who's the best candidate. Because to qualify for something isn't all that difficult when you have a pool of people. Granted, we only have two. But who's the best candidate is usually a result of a series of events. And the young lady that presented before us tonight, She talked about city council, she talked about working with the historic district, she talked about working with the River Commission, she talked about working with FEMA, federal level, as well as Rhode Island Emergency Services. And she also talked about the fact that she's eligible in 1 year compared to 4 years. These are only a handful of factors that I think would be shallow of us to move beyond in this discussion. And I'm also concerned for not the projects that are proposed to us and the lexicon and what we need to know as we evaluate as a board and come to conclusions, often helped by an engineer, no doubt about it. But I'm very concerned for the effort that I saw by Christine that resulted in communications, both verbal and written. And I think there's a significant burden behind the title, Planning Director, in terms of legal documents being created, disseminated throughout the state, as well as our town and to our boards. I'm just concerned that the two candidates clearly revealed to us that their ability in that sector is different. And I would hate to overlook that because we're talking about what's best for the town. And we're also talking about accreditation and accreditation and accreditation. And to overlook the fact that in 1 year we could have an accredited planner compared to in 4 years maybe is also shallow. So I sympathize with what I'm saying because part of the word town implies community, family-like, to know each other, to lend a helping hand. But we have a job to do here, and we have to be objective when we do it. So that's my position on tonight. I hope we can take into account perhaps what each of them bring to the role of planning director immediately. Thank you.
This, the five of us up here, I'll get to you. The five of us here have some significant decisions to make in the next coming months. And this one being one of them, the first. And then we have another one coming down the line. So I know all of us here want the best person to do the job that we expect them to do, and also to do, I mean, I don't want to be flippant to say, we're doing this to try to make the town a little bit better every day, but that's what we're here for. Because if we make the town a little bit better every day, we make our lives
Right.
a little bit better. We make our neighbors' lives a little bit better. So I think we are all five of us and all four of you are aware that we need to find the best candidate for the job. And I think that's where this.
This is only 11 years that I've been on the planning board. This is my 4th time in this meeting,
Yeah.
having this discussion. That's sad. That is sad. I supported the last planner, and I got angry with the last planner many times because one of the favorite saying of that planner is, well, ultimately it's your town, it's your decision. There's only one of the candidates tonight that I do not gamble. I work too hard for my money. There's only one candidate that will not have turnover. Turnover loses money in my business. And I can willing to say one of these candidates will still be here in 5 years. The other will be moving on, using us as a stepping stone. Because they are both very, very good. I will put them equal. One has more schooling, one has a higher degree, one has more work experience, one is more refined. One will be here in 5 years. Some of you on this board, some of them on this board will be here selecting another planner.
Well, I think when we hire somebody, we try to keep them here for the long term as much as possible.
I agree,
So-
absolutely.
So, I mean, two of us here have already been through, this will be our third town administrator. So, you know, I've been there, done that, so.
Yeah.
Mr. Tattlebaum, do you have? Sorry, hand over here, so.
No, unless somebody else wants to talk, I'll never never refuse to say something. I think it's really important to realize that neither of these two candidates are planners. They're second in command, or they don't have that experience. So my first question that I ask myself is that what we really want? As far as human beings, as far as solid citizens, I was very impressed. That's not an issue. And I realize it's only one interview, but you've talked to these people twice. We have the background, the information. These are solid citizens. But is that what we want? This is what we got, and maybe it's enough. My purview of a planning board is it's a pick and shovel job. It's just digging in day in and day out, pick and shovel, making sure the details are right. But what really matters is, A, your ability to manage people, communicate, and think long range. The pick and shovel work they can do. They were both talking about these things like they remembered stuff from 10 years ago, because that's what they do. So, am I concerned that we didn't get a director, a director, that's the title, who was in a smaller town or whatever, can move up? Yeah, I am. But on the other hand, Pawtucket, there's not a lot you're not gonna see in a city like that. It's 75,000 people. There's 9 square miles there. I guess they get flooding everywhere. Yeah. It's in Rhode Island, and a lot of issues there. And I think that she's seen a lot, and she's dealt with a lot, and all kinds of people, and she has a staff under her. On the other hand, Mr. Giosa, Cytec's a tremendously successful operation, big operation, lots of projects. He had people working for him as well. Neither of them have that experience. I am concerned about the conflict of interest, not because it can probably be managed, but I'd love this. I would be happier if Steve stepped forward and said, I'm out because I don't want to make it hard for my son, and maybe that's asking too much, and maybe that's the last thing he wants to do. But I am concerned that you'll have to operate with a possibility of just what'd you call it, Heidi, the perception?
The perception.
Right. That's concerning. And also, when do I take them off, when do I put them on, and that whole thing. I think it's never going to go away, it's always going to be there. I'd like to listen to other people say, but I was very impressed with the quality of these two human beings. They really, they've got a lot of experience, and they're really fine people. It's enough for me for now.
So that's why I asked that question of conflict during this interview. Unfortunately, that happens if someone with his background. And you're going to buy, if he becomes the nominee, you're going to buy into it. And you're going to buy into a part-time second in command, because he was never number one, neither was she. We don't have a number one person. We're picking a number 2 or a number 3 person. We got away with a town administrator as a number 2 person, but we were lucky that we were able to find someone like that. But I'm not really happy about hiring number 2 people to go to number 1 with no experience at all. But I'll defer to what the planning board wants to do, what their decision is, and I'll give you my thought of who I think would be the best of the 2. But I'm not completely sold on either one of them, unfortunately.
May I ask a question of the selectmen, please? Is it your opinion that we continue to look and perhaps tell these 2 that we haven't made a decision yet and we need more time?
It's an option.
That's the third option. I mean, you have 2 choices, and if you're not,
I mean, it does take a long
it's
time.
on the table. But it does take a long time. It's
It does.
going back out again. That's another
Right.
3-4 weeks, and then
Right.
whatever, are you going to get the same pool of candidates again, or are you going to are you looking for are you going to get a different candidate, But it also sends a signal out there saying, that, Dartmouth might be a difficult community to work with because they're looking for something, you know what I mean? I mean, the position's out there, So that's another thing you have to think about.
Well, there are communities, I think Wareham's still looking for a planner, and that's been for a while, according to Serpent. And as far as recusing, it is. I mean, I've recused myself from planning when someone's come before me, and I've been involved in that. I don't even go to the meeting, or I go in another room when we used to be live. And I brought that up only because he would be the planner. And, that's, my chairman feels that, it would be okay. I feel that they would both do the right thing, because I know both of them, all right? I know Steve, and I've just met Dan, but I can tell Dan's, as you said, he's a good person and intelligent and honest. It's not that I'm worried about. I'm only worried about the perception from the rest of the town and the rest of the engineers. And that's my only concern.
And I think maybe that perception would go away right away.
Maybe, you might be right.
But, I mean, you can't, unfortunately, we can't govern by innuendo.
Right,
It has to be with the facts that are at hand.
right.
And then we push forward.
Mr. Chairman,
so-
we haven't heard from everybody else. Do anybody else have something to say?
Mr. O'Neill?
Let's
Working my
see.
way that
So we brought you a tough decision.
No doubt about it.
Myself, Margaret, Kevin, Chris, and Denise, we did the best we could with the applicants that came forward. These positions, there are open positions in other towns. This is not an easy position to fill, as we found out the last round in the negotiations on the second time on the last round, and now this particular this time around. So, I've made 1,000 notes on all of them and tried to hone down exactly what the main issues are. Margaret and I had sent a request to the town administration to try and get a determination from either legal or the ethics board when it comes to the potential conflict between a planner and immediate family and when they come before them. There was one area that I thought may apply, but I think there's one other area in state law that applies more so, and it's 268A, Section 19, General Rule for Municipal Employees. And basically says a municipal employee may not participate in a particular matter in which, to his knowledge, he or certain persons or entities with whom he is related has a financial interest. We cannot ask Steve to not draw up plans in the town of Dartmouth, and we should not ask Dan not to apply for a job in the town of Dartmouth. So we're in a situation where the general rule was made for, right? So those persons or entities include immediate family members, partners, any business organization in which he is serving as an officer, director, trustee, or employee, to whom he is negotiating or has an arrangement regarding future employment. So the other issue is you can draw exemptions. So I think this is by the case. This is why I wanted Anthony or someone, Brian, to look at this. This may be the case where, and it might not be Dan that we're talking about. It might be the same situation. We should get a final determination on how we handle this.
I do have an update on
Okay,
that.
go ahead.
So I was able to connect with Brian Cruz, who's our assistant town council, and so he did confirm that there would be a conflict. So in cases where SciTech did submit an application before the board, Dan would have to recuse himself from the review of that. So in those particular cases, it would be, as we're talking about this evening, the responsibility of the assistant planning director to go through and track that application and bring any recommendations or findings to the board on that particular permit. So it wouldn't be an appearance in this case. There would actually be a conflict of interest because of that financial stake.
Okay.
So that's what council's recommendation was.
So we've got a determination on that and how we would move forward. So then we get into some of the other aspects of both applicants. There are pluses and minuses, as you all know. I think longevity, Kevin has a point. I think Dan is a local guy, and, will probably, looking at the resume, if you're a betting man, you have to bet that Dan is going to be around in this position, if all goes relatively well, for a decent period of time. And maybe Kevin wouldn't have to deal with this pain any longer. Given that, you've got Cameron with a different aspect on her education, I think a little bit more in depth, maybe a tad bit more articulate, but Dan, came before this board very different from how he, as an engineer, came before the planning board when I was involved. And rightly so. He came more humble, much more quiet, didn't press his issue because you don't want to put all your cards on the table. So he handled both boards, I think, very well. Cameron's she's a good orator. She's a good communicator. A couple of other more serious issues. We've got FEMA experience. Cameron has more FEMA experience. We're going to have issues with climate resiliency, with emergency planning. She has that experience, where Dan has a little bit less of that experience, maybe more field experience. But when it comes to dealing with FEMA, some of the federal regulations, I think Cameron might have them there. Floodplain administrator. This is one of the issues that I had brought up in our first screening meeting, that this may become an issue. There are some people that understand floodplain administration, and they have to keep up on those changes, flood maps and things like that. Cameron has more experience and has dealt with the floodplain administration in her current position, where I don't believe Dan has. But longevity goes a heck of a long way. I think his expertise on the ground is really a huge plus for him. It's the AICP, it's a difficult position, but we're not doing brain surgery tomorrow. We've got time on both candidates to get whatever certifications we really need, as long as they've voiced an interest in pressing forward with it. I think that's the most important thing, where they both communicated a need to continue bringing the town forward. So that I think that's the most important thing. Cameron's got the edge there. She's got maybe a year or a little less than 2 years to deal with starting the process to become certified, where Dan acknowledges that it's going to take him a little bit longer. So that's difficult for Dan to overcome. That's all I have so far. Sorry.
No,
Good job, Chris.
that's a good job. Kevin,
I don't know
anybody?
that Kevin Estes said anything.
Yeah.
Both are very differently qualified and different strengths, and it is a tough decision. Like you said, they're not. Yeah, I've been doing this for 10 years already. None of them has been a planner. I don't think that we should punt, because I think we run the risk of getting a worse pool. I think we should make a decision between the two.
Kevin, can I just chime in? Yeah. Denise from HR did mention to the screening committee that we'll lose these two. We'll lose these two for sure, so we would be starting from scratch, I think. Just to,
They're not going to come
let's
back.
be realistic about it.
sure, yeah.
That's where we would be.
They won't come back.
They interviewed, and we effectively, if we said no, we're going back out, we effectively said no.
Yeah, basically. that's what it is.
They're not going to come back.
Right.
So I guess the question would be,
They will come back in a heartbeat. Any-
to both boards, are you willing to make that decision tonight? I am.
I'm willing to.
Well,
I'd like to try to throw,
Listen to the planning board at this point first.
Chance,
oh, yeah, you haven't,
say something?
that's what I'm saying.
Yes, yes, go ahead.
Try to stop me. So I'm going to say this, and because on our board, as we've said, we're looking for a planning director, we're also going to be looking for a town administrator very soon, et cetera, et cetera. When we go out to look for these positions, we are held to the salary range that we're able to propose and the benefits package that the town offers. Those two things are going to be something that right now we cannot incentivize. That's what it is. And people that are looking at Dartmouth, that's what they're going to look at. What is the salary? What is the benefits package? What am I going to take home? Then they might look at the town. Where is it located? What are the issues? When I Google it, do I know anything about it? And make a decision. So the fact that we had a process where we already, the first screening committee went through and screened and came to us with 2 candidates, I don't know that in our salary range and our benefits package that we're going to get somebody that wants to move here. That being said, I think we do have 2 very good candidates before us. So knowing that, I look back at between these 2 candidates and what we're looking for when I look at the job description and what the job needs to do, and I look at things that the candidates mentioned during their interview. And I look at communication, verbal and written, communication with staff, communication with and between boards and committees, state level, federal level, the knowledge of the coastal floodplain, sea level rise, balancing with agriculture and housing, mixed use thinking, historic districts, promoting infrastructure, hazard mitigation plan, bikeway projects, the ability to do staff training and having had staff that directly in this role report to that person, the municipal government process, overseeing big projects, public meeting presentations. I look at this and say, we have a candidate that may not have been number 1 in the role, that has more experience in the role than the other candidate. If we were looking for an assistant, I might be thinking differently, because I think we have someone that had that level of experience, would be able to make an impact. But for me, my vote is clear tonight, based on what I've said.
Anyone else? All right, so what do you want to do?
Do you want to, are you prepared to vote?
I am.
All right,
am.
I think out of respect and deference, because you're going to be working with the planner, I'd like the motion to come from the planning board, if possible, if you're comfortable in making that.
So,
Right, all right, well, that's, right, but I think whatever the motion is from the planning board and how they vote sets the stage for us.
so you would like a motion
You
from
won't.
board?
You have to have, there's gonna be 2 motions. You're gonna have to make a motion who to hire, we're gonna have to make a motion to hire, but I'd like you to go first.
So you don't want to do a vote?
Well, it's your vote. You're voting on the motion,
Okay, I'm the chair, I can't make a motion.
right?
I'll make a motion. I would like to recommend Ms. Bennett for the position of planning director. They were both very good, but as Mrs. Brooks said, I think that Ms. Bennett has a lot of background, and so I make a motion.
I would like to second that motion. I think that, if I may just shed light on my motion for a moment, perception is reality. That's what perception is outside of walls. Inside of the walls, when a group gathers and talks about perception, it's what the outside world calls reality. And I think we need to exercise some caution. I do think my vote, my motion in support of Margaret's is objective, however, in that we are looking for someone who has the ability to play or fulfill the role of a planner sooner than perhaps another candidate. Her skills are more planning related than project related. And in that, perhaps is the greatest difference between the two. So once again, I second Margaret's motion.
Okay, we have a motion made by Margaret Sweet, second by Nick Cyclepatis. Roll call vote. Margaret Sweet?
Yes.
Nick Cyclepatis?
Yes.
Kevin Estes?
Yes.
Kevin Mello, no.
All right, Select Board.
Just one item on that. So for the vote, this would be a vote to appoint, in this case, the candidate is Ms. Cameron Bennett to the position of planning director pending a successful negotiation and background. That would be the motion.
Just one comment, if I may. Yes. I share Mr. Mello's concern about longevity, but I am consumed by the conflict of interest. I think it's something that you'll have to deal with, but from my perspective, and I think a lot of people here, it's too big. And therefore, my attitude is that I certainly would go along with a vote with the planning board, because if they've chosen and made their stand based on all those, and you ultimately have to work with them, and I think we should support them in that regard.
Okay, so,
like to make a motion.
all right, our motion from here would be,
I'd like to make a motion to appoint Cameron Bennett as the planning director,
I'll gladly,
pending successful negotiations.
I'll gladly second that.
And background check.
all right, motion made by Mrs. Brooks, seconded by Mr. Mickelson. On the motion, roll call vote. On the motion, any questions? Comments? Roll call vote. Mr. Tattlebaum?
Yes.
Mr. Mickelson?
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill?
Yes.
Mrs. Brooks?
Yes.
Chair votes in favor, yes.
Wow.
Okay, so we have our potential candidate. HR will contact Ms. Bennett and regarding that, and then it'll be left up to us for the contract to see it. That's how it works. But we'll keep you abreast of that, just as because that's how we operate. We want to make sure that you're aware of what it is. So we're going there. In fact, we may even ask for your recommendation. In fact,
Thank
I
you.
think we are going to ask you for your
Thank you.
recommendation. So get together, make your recommendation, give it to Chris. So,
For salary?
yes. Okay?
Okay.
And then we'll go
You
from
know
there.
you have the range, the information on the range.
Yep. And if you need to, just contact Denise, she'll give you the range.
Okay.
That was posted, so. With that, I'm going to have the planning board make a motion to
Motion to
adjourn.
Second?
No, I can't.
Make a motion that we adjourn.
Okay, motion made by Nick Cyclepatis,
No,
second by Kevin Estes. All in favor? Nick Cyclepatis?
Yes.
Kevin Estes? Margaret Sweet?
Yes.
Kevin Mello, yes.
Okay, and we're going to have an adjournment. We're going to adjourn. We are not going to go into executive session because we want to get the information on the salary range and everything before we do anything, and we want to make sure that Ms. Bennett is informed that she is the candidate of choice. So with that, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Made by Mr. Mickelson, seconded by Mr. Tattlebaum. On the motion, any questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, none unanimous? Good night, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.